Going into this blind.
This is the x-ray of an 86-year-old woman who came to the ER with fever, cough, and worsening shortness of breath. Never be taken lightly. Know that I did the right thing because I did right by my patient and her family.
That's not what I was going to talk about, but it's really hard when you got people who are working with you who think, no, just don't do the effort that you think is necessary because it might be risky or it might be just not worth it. It's always worth it, bitch. Moving on from that, um, we're just gonna check notifications real quick. Yo, wanted to look smart, but it backfired. It's attract. It was attached to the job application. Understand gravity as a desire. Dude, people are still trying to figure out what gravity is, so shut the fuck up. It's a trick question. Everyone knows why stuff settles down to the bottom of cups and whatever else, and the liquids separate and everything else. Density slightly higher density than the fluid. Exactly, but also it's fluid. I'm an idiot. Shut the why is this happening? Stop that. Whatever that is. Go away. I'll deal with that shit later. Oh, I could say thick fluid. Yeah, you don't understand. You just literally got a Nobel Prize, bitch. Enjoy. Um, moving on to the actual topic of this bitch. Okay, we're just gonna ignore that commercial and move on to the actual topic. First go to the beginning and
You probably know that moving clocks tick slower compared to the ones that are at rest, or that clocks that are closer to a black hole tick slower compared to the ones that are far away. But there's something even more important. These are both wrong. I kid you not. This turns out to be one of the most misunderstood ideas in all of relativity. Clocks never tick slower, time never slows down. When I first read about this in a book called Exploring Black Holes, a highly suggested book on general relativity, I had my whole life was a lie kind of moment. I mean, what do you mean this is wrong? Isn't this at the heart of relativity? And if time never really slows down, what exactly is time dilation? It felt like I was back to square one. Nothing made sense until now. After going through that book thoroughly, oh my god, I think I finally get it. I understand that this is a big misconception. I've had it for a long time as well. So by the end of this video, you and I will move away from this metaphors and we'll step by step rediscover from scratch, purely intuitively, how physicists actually think about time dilation. So if you're ready for this,
We're going to think about how they think about time dilation, meaning we're going to be wrong.
let's begin. So where do we start? Well, let's talk to Archibald Wheeler, the co-author of that book.
I literally thought that he was going to say that he understands that time dilation doesn't exist. Well, we're already on a bad start. Let's keep going.
Exploring Black Holes. And if you don't know who that is, he's the person whole coined the term.
I'm going to eat a
black hole.
sandwich.
So, legendary guy. All right, Wheeler, why is it wrong to say a moving clock runs slower? Wheeler says because Einstein's relativity never said that. Wait, what? Yeah, instead it says you will measure a moving clock to run slower. And at this point, I'm disappointed.
Huh. Yeah, because like the way I understand it is that because the atomic clock is moving at a different rate, the distance that the light has to travel is greater, then it'll take longer for that tick to happen, and the clock isn't actually accurate. So, what do you have to say?
Isn't that the same thing, Wheeler? What's the difference? And Wheeler says, oh, it's a big difference. In fact, let me give you an example. You and your friend are moving side by side in a car. You glance over and see yourself overtaking her. So you measure her car to be slower. Does that mean that her car is slower? And I say, of course, that's how normal people talk. We don't say, I measure your car to be moving slower. We say, your car is slower.
Well, you also measure the amount of distance that you both traveled, and the answer still is it's slower.
Wheeler says, okay, but what if both of your speedometers read exactly 100 miles an hour? In fact,
so persistence of vision thing, something about, wait, hold on. Okay, so they're moving the same, moving the same rate through space, their own speed being the exact same, space is the one that is the moving slower part. Like time and everything else is doing the different thing, and this is again an assumption. It's also completely just ignoring certain parts of relativity and things that are actually happening. And again, it's a thing that happens if time dilation is a real thing, which yeah.
What if she sees herself overtaking you and she measures your car to be going slower? Then what? Wheeler, what nonsense is this?
Well, first of all, they can't both be right. Literally.
You're saying both of our cars are going at 100 miles an hour and yet we both see ourselves overtaking the other person? How does that make any sense?
Only one of them would be going slower in a time dilation scenario. Not both.
Says, let's look from the top.
But
if
whatever.
both of your cars were actually going exactly parallel to each other, yeah, then it doesn't make any sense. But what if your cars were having an angle? Now look, even though...
Okay, this is yeah, okay. This is the perspective thing that can happen.
Both of your cars are moving at exactly the same speed. From your perspective, you're overtaking.
That means that you're not judging the other person's speed versus their motion, you're making a different kind of assessment. You're not seeing them move slower. You're not judging them as moving slower. You're judging them as moving in a different axis, and if you know this information, then you could understand their actual speed along that axis. You wouldn't say they are moving slower. You're saying we're separating. What?
Her, you measure her car to be slower.
No.
But from her perspective, she's overtaking you. She measures your car to be slower.
This is a false observation and not how people would understand reality whatsoever. This is not how that works.
So look, Mohesh, right in front of your eyes, just because you measure the other car to be slower doesn't mean it is slower.
I can understand that if you're trying to make those explanations, and then he does say, of course, that you're not actually going slower, and it has to do with the spatial relationship and stuff. But I'm still thinking that he's not on the right track somehow.
Measure the other car to be slower doesn't mean it is slower.
Okay.
So what's going on over here? Well, both of you are judging the other person's motion from an angle. That's why you see the other person's car to be going slower.
And again, doing correct measurements, you wouldn't say they're going slower. That's the thing. So you have to be correct measurements. Moving on.
Even though it's not, your perspectives are tilted. Isn't that incredible? Wheeler says your friend and you measuring the other person's clock to be slower are exactly like these two drivers. I mean, the situation is so incredible.
Well, the thing about this scenario is that the assumption is that they're parallel and moving backward and stuff. So instead of them being parallel, there's a curvature of space-time, blah, blah, blah. And so there is a time dilative thing. But you have to understand, real time dilation has to do with actual measurements of time going slower. It's not a measure of your distance, how you traveled, or any of that nonsense. It has to do with the instruments on board say they moved slower. Over the course of a long period of time, those clocks became desynchronized with reality. Okay, so why would that happen? It's because they're atomic clocks with lights that have different measurements based on how far you go per second. So if it's consistent, it will say consistent. If it's slowing down constantly, it will be having a faster and faster tick rate. And this is what I think you're not understanding. Moving on.
Incredibly analogous. So just like the car speedometer, both of your clocks are ticking at exactly the same rate. Time is passing at the same rate. Now,
we literally did an experiment where two clocks go at different directions on different planes in the 70s, and both at the same speed on the car, winky face. One of the clocks was up, the other clock was down. That's because the rotation of the Earth was the factor. So it's like moving forward or backward on a train. Your relative motion compared to flat space is either additional with the train motion or negated by the train motion. The train being the rotating Earth. So depending on how you do that math, you can calculate where you how much distance the light in those atomic clocks actually traveled, and you will find exactly the time dilation, which means you don't see both of them having positive time dilation where both of them seem to be going slower. One went slow, the other one went faster. This is reality. I'm
the car's example, you measured the other person to be slower because you're measuring each other's motion.
You're also getting a distance apart. So there's a factor that you can do. There's a little bit of math that you can trigger, blah, 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 blah. So you can figure out the speed with the distance going away as well as a part of the distance going forward. A, B squared, blah, blah, blah.
From an angle in 2D space. Similarly, here you're measuring each other's clock to be ticking slower because you are measuring the motion from an angle in 4-dimensional space-time.
Yeah, that's where I thought you were going.
So if you want a full intuition of what's going on, just like before, we need a top view, a space-time top view. We need to draw a space-time.
This is a very ignoring the facts explanation so far. So we're going to just listen.
Diagram. So let's do that.
Sure.
So let's
whatever.
bring them together and draw a space-time graph. So over here, the horizontal represents the space and the vertical represents the time. Let's choose a reference frame in which they're both moving away from each other at exactly the same speed. It will make things super analogous to our cars, okay? So here's what it look like. Look, they're going away from each other at the same speed. This is called their world lines. And now look at how analogous the situation is with respect to the cars. Oh my God. Over here, the cars are moving at exactly the same speed through space. Here, both of us are going at the same speed through space-time. Here, both the cars have traveled exactly the same distance in space. So let's say 100 miles. Meaning if their odometers reading was 0 here, both of their odometers over here will be 100.
I don't care who you are. If I go in one direction and another one goes in another direction, our clocks are going to be synchronized as long as we're going in straight line through empty space. It doesn't make any difference. The difference happens, as they say, in curved space-time, blah, blah, blah. The curve around the planet. Orbiting some bullshit. Not going fucking straight, bitch.
Right? Here, both of us have traveled exactly the same distance in space-time. The same distance in space-time.
I've eaten the same amount of bites in my
Now,
sandwich.
in space-time, this distance is called proper time. It's a measure of how much we have aged or how much our clocks, our personal clocks have ticked. So, for example, we can say 3 years. Both of us have aged exactly by 3 years. So if both of our clocks were in sync over here and say it was 0, then here it would read 3 years. Our clocks are like the odometers over here. So look, clocks are ticking at the same rate, time passes at the same rate for everyone. So just like how here we are measuring each other's motion from an angle, and that's why we measure the other person's car to be going slower. Look, we are measuring each other's person's motion through an angle in 4D space-time. That's why we measure the other person's clock to be ticking slower, even though clocks are...
We literally are not noticing a difference between the clocks, winky face. What are you talking about? We just made a delusion up. A complete illusion. No fact in that.
Ticking at a normal rate, time is passing normally. Now, this is already starting to blow my mind. I'm starting to get some beautiful intuition, but Wheeler...
Okay, I get intuition about Sudoku. You're getting high.
Over here,
on science,
I was able to draw my line of sights and then rotate to look at things from my perspective, and I could clearly see why I measure her to be behind me, and similarly why she measures me to be behind her. I could do that. Can we do the same thing over here? Is it possible?
This will be interesting.
Wheeler says, yeah, we can do that. We can draw line of sights and we can rotate and we can measure from each other's perspective, and this will be super clear. And I'm like, all right, Wheeler, let's do it. Let's get that intuition. Okay, so are you ready for it? All right, let's do this. Let's get rid of this. Let's draw.
You know, if I were to go in 2 different directions, literally, blah, 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 I've already said this. The clocks wouldn't be any different because it's not about a straight line, but never mind.
Line of sights in space-time, and let's rotate. Oh my God, this... Wait, what the heck? What is this? Wheeler, I don't understand what's going on.
Um, I'm just speculating here, but if you just notice, I'm gonna just have to slap him in his face right now. Your diagram is showing the red line to be not lining up with the straight of the other bitch, like the car is doing. So, what is wrong with your red line here, bitch? You got the diagram all fucked up. What did you do wrong? You didn't make it parallel with the stuff. You did something wrong here with your visualization. Let's watch. This is gonna be good.
Stop! What is this? And Wheeler says, oh, I forgot, Mahesh, you don't have intuition for space-time rotation, right? And I'm like, what the heck is a space-time rotation? Wheeler says, all right, Mahesh, let's take a step back. Let's come back to the cars over here. When we rotate, over here, we follow a circle, right? Why? Why does rotation over here follow a circular path? And I say, well, that's what rotation is. Rotation is circular, right? And Wheeler says, no, it's got something to do with the geometry. What do you mean? In normal space, the distance formula is given by the Pythagoras theorem, right? And we know that x and y displacements are arbitrary. They depend upon your graphs and how your axes are tilted. But the value of this distance is absolute. It's an invariant. It doesn't matter.
Okay, so here's the thing that bugged me about it is that when he went, let's go back to the other diagram.
And Wheeler says, oh, I forgot, Mahesh. What the heck? What is this? Let's draw a line of sights in space-time and let's rotate.
So when it's lined up with this, first of all, they're not. The other one is higher, further away, and stuff with that direction. It's not supposed to do that. So now, again, you're not lining up the thing the same way as the cars, so you just need to explain that.
Oh my God, wait, what the heck? What is this? Wheeler, I don't understand what's going on. Stop, what is this? And Wheeler says, oh, I forgot, Mahesh, you don't have intuition for space-time rotation, right? And I'm like, what the heck is a space-time rotation?
You want to watch the game, not clips, not...
Wheeler says, all right, Mahesh, let's take a step back. Let's come back to the cars over here. When we rotate, over here, we follow a circle, right? Why? Why does rotation over here follow a circular path? And I say, well, that's what rotation is. Rotation is circular, right? And Wheeler says, no, it's got something to do with the geometry. What do you mean? In normal space, the distance formula is given by the Pythagoras theorem, right? And we know that x and y displacements are arbitrary. They depend upon...
I'm still trying to figure out if there's any reason about what he did in the other, but I'll just wait for him to explain that, I
your
guess.
graphs and how your axes are tilted. But the value of this distance is absolute. It's an invariant. It doesn't matter who looks at it. Everybody agrees that this is, for example, 100 miles. And so look, this is a constant. And so we have x squared plus y squared is a constant, which is a circle. That's why the rotations are circular. In fact, think of it this way. If my axis tilts such that x value increases, then the y value has to decrease so that the sum stays a constant. And that's why if x value increases, the y value decreases. Similarly, if the x...
I'm going to ignore all of this because that is not anything about anything close to how that actually works. Because you gotta align yourself with the road or whatever, or the site of travel or something. And total distance from the center, you're not going from the side of the thing and then ending up... No, this is ridiculous. This is absolute bunk.
Value increases here, the y
Let's
value
move
must
on.
decrease in such a way it traces a circle. That's why rotations are circular.
No, that's really not why it is. It's because you're tilting on an angle in comparison to your God fucking damn it. It's because you're dude, just put a freaking pen into the table, right? Take a rope or a bit of string and do one of those stupid draw a circle things, right? It's because your angle versus the center has changed. This relationship that you're talking about and whatever else, blah blah blah, is completely irrelevant information that's like a misdirect that has nothing to do with any of it. Just absolutely nothing. And so when you apply this kind of logic somehow, you're going about it from a perspective of someone just not thinking clearly. You're pulling stuff out of a thin air here. Even if no.
Okay.
So let's say that step one, the angles is not the best thing because time dilation happens with the same angles, sort of, but not really, and has to do with distance from the circle going along its edge, not away from the center. Let's just. This is a disgusting video at this point. You're getting a freaking negative mark for this nonsense, dude.
Kind of makes sense.
No, it doesn't.
Now,
It
what about
absolutely
in
does not.
space-time? The distance formula in space-time is given very analogous to Pythagoras theorem, but with a minus sign. And if you're wondering where that minus sign comes from, we've talked about that in great detail in our previous video. I'm not trying to fish for views over here, but I want to tell you that this doesn't come just like that. It can be rediscovered from scratch, step by step. And I've done that in a previous video. So if you...
I'm not watching the other one. Say it here.
need the intuition for that, feel free to check that out.
Old Spice shampoos are scientifically...
Need the intuition for that, feel free to check that out.
Yeah, no, I actually completely... if I have to watch two videos in order to understand where you get that minus sign, you could just sum it up. The full explanation is not necessary in this video. Whatever.
But for the purpose of this video, we're just going to borrow that the distance formula in space-time, very similar to Pythagoras, but with a minus sign. So Wheeler says, Mahesh, look, just like over here, the t value and the x value are arbitrary. They depend upon reference frame, how your axes are tilted. But the value of this distance, proper time, that's an invariant. So this time, our equation becomes t squared minus x squared is a constant. What is that equation? That is a graph of a hyperbola.
Okay. No, I understand the hyperbola nonsense.
Rectangular hyperbola. Again, to get some more intuition, think of it this way. This time, if x value increases,
it's a
the
saddle
t value
shape.
should also increase so that the difference stays a constant. So if the x value increases, the t value increases, and if the x value increases here, the t value increases. And so we now get a hyperbola. So in space-time, the rotation must follow the tip of a hyperbola.
We're still only going certain distance that's the same. So we're at the bottom of that hyperbola.
That is the difference between rotations in normal space and rotations in space-time.
Okay, also, you cannot say rotations in space-time. It's rotations in space-time near a celestial body like a thing that has gravity or whatever else. Maybe. This is a high maybe. Okay? But you're still mentioning it wrong, so you get more minus marks.
And this is super non-intuitive to begin with, but once we get...
Okay, when I understand the gravitational field stuff that everyone has already explained, I have seen the hyperbola. I understand the hyperbola. I understand how that works. I know how the gravitational thing does the world line, but something it compresses, so it makes this shape. It makes sense. Only it reference to near a body like a planet and stuff. So you're talking about gravity. Whatever.
Practice with this. Oh boy, everything
Open space just completely ignores this. This is useless.
is gonna fall in place, okay?
Yeah,
But
yeah, sure.
wait a second, I have a question. You can draw lots of hyperboles, right? Hyperbole. Which hyperbola should we draw over here?
Hyperbole is a very funny. I don't think that's the hyperbolas. Hyperbole is, I think, a completely different. Whatever. Who cares? Nitpicking at that point. I'm gonna admit nitpicking at that point. Never
Wheeler
mind.
says, excellent question. Remember that the world lines can have
It's about the intensity of the gravity, by the way. That's how you get the hyperbola. Shut up.
a maximum angle of
It's still wrong, but shut up.
45 degrees. This
Is completely wrong because you can get lighter gravity that has a lower hyperbola. You don't want to think about it, but moon gravity is greater than 45 degrees. Do some math.
represents the speed of light. We're assuming the speed of light is 1.
I don't care about that shit. Now you're mixing diagrams. That's another minus mark.
Giving you an angle of 45 degrees. Since you cannot go beyond the speed of light, these hyperbole cannot go beyond.
Yeah, you're mixing diagrams, buddy. That's not okay in trying to explain things with any cohesion.
The 45 degree lines. In other words, these 45 degree lines form the asymptotes or tangents
Asymptote.
to the hyperbole at infinity. And so only the hyperbole which have these 45 degree asymptotes are the ones that we draw over here.
Again, the stuff that's happening about the hyperbola, the gravitational lines, and how that works, and the fact that it's similar to the way that you can draw hyperbola about the stuff about light is what you have to understand. Completely separate information bases of reality. The gravity stuff and all of that stuff has to do with how things are pulled in and how space-time is more compressed near the core or whatever something. That's what makes those hyperbola. The light cone nonsense stuff is a different entire thing. So you're mixing. This is bad. This is just bad science at this point. Miscommunication on the highest order.
And so look, our distance formula in space-time represents a
Or it's so much, it's like you're trying to crunch it down into just the smallest bits, but you're missing like some key points about why it does this.
family of hyperbole with vertex at the origin, and similarly the distance formula in space represents
It's still hyperbolas. I don't care. Nitpicking.
a family of circles with the center at the origin. Look at how analogous the situation is. Oh my god.
I am sad in general.
We all say
Analogous situation is. Oh my god.
There's no.
If you were to draw lines from here all the way to this particular circle, they all have the same length because they're all the radii. So in this particular case, we can say they all are 100 miles, and therefore this circle represents a 100 miles circle, right? The same thing applies over here. All the lines drawn from this point onto the hyperbole are of the same length in space-time. And I say, Wheeler, but they don't look the same length. They look different. And Wheeler says that's the whole point. This geometry is non-Euclidean. You can't draw non-Euclidean geometry on paper.
Listen, yes, you can, and also, I already understand gravity fall off at distant stuff, and it has not light,
on screen, it gets
whatever.
distorted. That is what makes it super non-intuitive, but at the same time super duper interesting. But the analogy is so amazing that I can use this to derive insights. I can now say
I'm still saying you're not on to something, you're just on something. Science. Just hyping up and
all these lines, even though they look different, they must all have the same length. And when I say length, I'm talking about proper time. So they all, for example, in this case,
look, in the light cone diagram, it has to do with how close you are to a regular speed and then going the speed of light. It's nothing to do with moving through space. Nothing. It is a speed relationship. He's using it as a space relationship. The hyperbola comes from the gravity stuff, which is a space thing. It has to do with gravity drop off at different angles, stuff, how it's supposed to work and things. It's not the same.
have 3 years. These lines are all 3 years long. And so we can say this is the hyperbola of 3 years. And so therefore, just like how while rotating over here, we follow the tip of a circle because they all represent 100 miles, while rotating, we should rotate along the hyperbola because they all represent 3 years. Does that make sense? Okay, so
Yeah, but 3 years at different speeds. That's the thing. This rockets aren't moving at different speeds, but we're not actually. Technically, the speed diagram stuff is still correct or whatever. But then, okay, what? Regarding like how they're moving through space, and then regarding their having the same speed, just at different distances, their clock's moving at the same rate. You're lost. It's lost.
are you ready for the rotations now?
Okay, sure.
Let's do it slowly. Here goes. Just like how I have now gone.
Okay, according to this, the rotation would then indicate that they're going closer to the speed of light as you look at the other one, and then you're moving closer to the speed of light, but you're actually not. So you're misjudging each other's speed. But we all say we are actually all moving at the same speed. So then what does this actually signify? It signifies that in this region of space, time is literally dilated. But then you also are saying that in the other region, it's dilated in the same way so that they are both moving closer to light instead of what they think they are doing. So they're both accelerated. This is not
Into the perspective of the red car, I am now looking at things from my reference frame. Similarly, we can go back and go into her reference frame.
And again, it would seem that they went further, it seems, or they went faster, because the closer to the light that you end up going faster. So, again, misjudging the speed wouldn't happen because we all register the same speed, except for we're registering speed for something else. And it has to do with, like, there are examples in which you could possibly do this, but it's also like skipping all of that explanation and stuff, which you're just generally not supposed to do.
Similarly, we have gone into her reference frame over here. Isn't that amazing?
Uh-huh.
So we've gotten the first thing down. We now understand how to do rotations.
Yeah,
But
sure.
now comes the second thing, line of sight. How do you draw line of sight? Well, look, the line of sight is drawn. Let's get clear all of those things. The line of sight is drawn tangent to the circle.
Uh-huh.
Similarly, over here, we're going to draw a line of sight tangent to the hyperbola. But Wheeler, I have a question. Wait a second. Over
So here's the thing. You can't draw a line of sight tangent to the hyperbola because you're physically moving in a circular rotated thing away, same as the cars. You're not actually traveling. Okay, the idea of this, the reason why things like this can happen is if the physical space and the area between spaces is expanding, so you end up with this kind of saddle. And this is not shown in the diagram. Maybe he shows it later.
here, I know what line of sight means in space, but what is the meaning of line of sight in space-time?
And also, these lines are not straight. They are going, it's like if you're both going up on the surface of the Earth from south to north. If you're going along the same latitude, because you're going along the circle, you separate and then you come back together. There's the same amount of time traveled, and the distances are different at some point, but then they come back together. If you look at any sphere thing, that's the best way of thinking about how this might work, where it looks like a straight line, but it's actually on a curved surface. And again, this is things that he's hand waving, not explaining, whatever.
Time. Wheeler says, great question. Let's go back to the analogy. So if I were to look at my line of sight, for example, what this represents is that
This is
all
flat
the
space
stuff
time.
that is in front of it, that is something that I'm yet to cross, right? I'm continuously moving, so I'm yet to cross them. So in some sense, they lie ahead, they lie in my future.
Yeah,
And
sure.
all the stuff behind, well, I've already crossed them. So they lie behind me, they lie in my past. And all the stuff that is right along this line of sight, they are currently, I'm passing them right now. So that represents my present or simultaneity. Wait, why is it called simultaneity? Well, because all the stuff that is there right now, for example, if there are two barrels right now, they're in my present because I'm currently crossing them, and I'm crossing them at the same time, simultaneously. So the line of sight really represents the line of simultaneity. It tells, from my perspective, what is future, what is past, and what is simultaneous.
Okay.
Your spending changes.
I don't care about spending. So again, the car's on flat space. What he's doing in the right side of the screen has to do with if you're moving along the surface of a globe, which is not flat, so there can be a spreading out that happens. And let's just say that they just continue to spread out for some reason. Whatever. There's still no time nonsense there. But also, he's not showing the curvature of the actual area that they're moving through. He's showing a flat space that they are traveling through, which is not how you would end up with this conclusion. And it's a lot of stuff where I can get where his ideas are from, but his diagrams are lacking or something. And also, there's mixtures of diagrams, which is also just wrong. That's a complete taboo. You never do that. Never mix your diagrams. Just don't. It's very important you don't.
Over here, all the events, remember this is space-time, so every single point is an event. So all the events above this line represents my future.
Yeah, but I'm not moving in that direction, buddy. So yeah, this is that is not my future. I'm not moving in a diagonal line towards my future or whatever. And whatever. This is you're lost.
All the events below represents my past, and all the events along this line represents my simultaneity. So if there are two supernovae explosions over here, in my perspective, they are simultaneous. Now, I may not see them simultaneously because this one is closer, so its light reaches me before the light from here. But if I were to do all the calculations, I would
sure.
eventually conclude, hey, these two happen simultaneously in
Wait, just look at the lines that he drew. Never mind.
my
Forget it.
frame. But remember, her axis is tilted with respect to mine, so her definition of future, past, and simultaneity is different.
I'm not gonna vomit. I'm not gonna vomit. I'm not gonna vomit.
And therefore, for example, she will disagree that the two barrels are simultaneous. She will say she passed through this barrel first, then she passed through this barrel.
Yeah, you're. I want to put up that meme of the guy from the movie saying, "What are you talking about?" You can see it in your head, right?
And now imagine how weird their conversation would be if they couldn't perceive this angle. They might be thinking they're moving parallelly. And so one person says, hey, I passed both the barrels at the same time. The other person says, I passed one barrel first and then the other one. And they're wondering, how is that possible? Relativity of simultaneity. But
no, that's nothing to do with simultaneity, actually. Because in the one, it's not a relativity situation. You're mixing again. That's not okay.
we understand from the top view, hey, come on, folks. This whole simultaneity business is relative. What's important is that these two barrels are there on space. Now, whether they are simultaneous or not depends on your tilt, depends on the direction in which you're moving. Obviously.
Yeah, and if you were to have it so that they're all like whatever else, somehow something or another, like you're on some tangent. Let's just
You're
go.
right.
Let's just go.
The same thing applies over here. My friend's simultaneity axis is tilted, so her definition of future, past, and what's simultaneous is different. In fact, look, she's
Okay. So first of all, the distance between the supernova and this guy is that it happened and you get the information sooner than this guy. Although with this one, it's supposed to happen simultaneous, but also this is a weird. It's a weird. It's a no.
says the two supernovae explosions are not simultaneous. This happened first. It's already in our past. And now this is happening. And so we disagree on what's simultaneous and what's not. And we make a big deal out of it, thinking that, oh my God, relativity of simultaneity, oh, non-intuitive. But it's only non-intuitive if you think in terms of space and time separately. If you were to look at the top view, it makes perfect sense. The two supernovae exist on space-time. That's a fact. Now, whether you call them simultaneous...
Again, things like this happen with a curved space-time or whatever else. When each of the events happen and whatever else, blah blah blah, something, you're missing certain points. And it's weeds.
or not
just
depends
weeds.
upon the angle in
You're
which
in
you're
the
moving in
weeds.
space-time, and based on that, how your simultaneity lines are tilted. I don't know about you, but doesn't this make so much sense? Oh,
No. Somehow, suddenly, You have, okay, if you're continuing to think of the light cone and stuff, this one was never moving. This one has accelerated, this one's accelerated at the same rate, this one's accelerated at light speed. Or near light speed. Which diagram are you using, bud? I'm still going to be on you about that because, holy shit.
My God.
My God, indeed.
Long story short, the line of sight really represents the line of simultaneity. And Wheeler says, Mahesh, so now you have the full picture, you have the full context. Can you look at this diagram and see what each one measures the other clock is doing? And I'm like, yeah, we can. I mean, look at this. From my perspective, right now at my present, it's 3 years. But my line of simultaneity cuts through her past. And that's why when I measure her clock, I will say it's less than 3 years, maybe about 2 years. So you can see right in front of your eyes, the reason for that is not because her clock is...
Yeah, but you would have both of them see that time dilation literally says one sees the clock is moving back, the other one moving forward. Not both of them moving back. It don't work that way. Based on actual observation, it just does not work that way. Or any amount of logic, it just does not work that way. And you're missing curved space diagram. And you're missing other things. And also, whatever.
Ticking slower, the reason is because my axis of simultaneity is tilted. My present cuts through her past. It is so analogous, right? And the same thing applies to her as well. From her perspective, look, her simultaneity cuts through my past, and so she measures my clock to be behind her.
Where's the direction of travel, and why would the line of sights be down the side angle of the ship and whatever else, and you're just not...
It's all
If I can...
about our tilts in simultaneity. That explains it all. So now let's do a rotation.
I'm gonna peel my orange, okay? I don't have time for this shit. I have to eat. Go ahead, talk.
And see, from my perspective, her clock is behind. And from her perspective, my clock is behind. I am getting goosebumps over here.
Yeah, but
so now
you gotta realize...
Let's go back to your original statement. Saying a moving clock runs slower is equivalent to saying a car's odometer.
Yeah, again, when you actually look at what happens with freaking satellites, the clocks on the satellites are not saying the clocks on the ground are moving slower. If we notice the clocks in the satellites moving slower, one of them is moving faster, the other one's moving slower. So you're missing, like, any experiment done ever on satellites? So where are you getting any of this intuition? Question mark?
Measured from an angle runs slower. Do you agree with this? No.
What?
I don't agree with this. Sure, when you measure a car's motion from an angle, you will measure it to be slower. But saying that its odometer is running slow, that's absolutely wrong. No, you measure it to be slower because it's geometry. You're measuring it from an angle. But saying its odometer is running slower with respect to me, or its wheels are spinning slower with respect, no, none of that is happening. This is... It happens with every good thing. Wrong. The same idea holds here, says Wheeler. When an object is moving in space, what's really happening is that you're measuring its motion from an angle in 4D spacetime. And because our simultaneities are tilted, we measure the other person's clock behind us. But it would be wrong to say that their clocks are running slower. Absolutely wrong.
When the rats score.
I've already finished my orange, buddy.
Their clocks are running slower. Absolutely wrong. And I hope
The observation is the clocks are moving slower because the clocks are inaccurate. Because we literally have observations of the clocks moving slower. You can't say they're not. You're denying reality at this point. And yeah, no, I already understood that about you. I'm just saying, go find some research.
you agree now, the same thing applies to gravity as well. Black holes, for example, don't slow down time or make clocks run slower. No, all it does.
If you were to think of time dilation, you would think of a scrunched up timeline where more time happens at certain areas of space and a stretched out timeline where less time happens in the same area of space. Question mark. So, in those ideas of how time is supposed to scrunch and stretch, these are the observations. But again, the clocks would be going the same, but the amount of time actually taking place, meaning I could be 70 years older than you after you traveled 2 minutes into the future, if you were to put it to the extreme. But somehow you're not paying attention.
Is it curves space-time, and that affects what we think is simultaneous.
So why didn't you have a curved space-time in your diagram?
Close to it. At the end of the day, it's a.
You talk about objects moving away from the circle and stuff, and you forget about how things work. Otherwise, something, and mixed diagrams. It's a lot of things.
Comment on how simultaneity is changing. It's a comment on geometry. That's why these are useful metaphors for beginners who don't want to think about hyperbolic geometry, but man, this is so wrong.
Okay, you can think about hyperbolic geometry. You can think about all those different things. And then you can say, yeah, around a planet, something else happens and blah, blah, blah. But also what happens around a planet is that if you're going to go in a basic orbit, you usually do a slow descent, meaning the amount of distance over time is decreasing constantly. The amount of distance is changing per unit of time. So when you actually do all the math correctly, and then you do a burn to accelerate yourself up, so you don't want to fall into the planet, but you don't have to burn all the time. So you do a hoop, 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 bouncing motion, but hoop, 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 hoop. So you don't fall into this. You don't just go and then go crash. You gotta go and then up and then up. Thing. You're missing observations about how satellites work. You're missing observations of other things. Blah, 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 blah.
It causes so much misconceptions. We are so much better off with this picture. It is the.
I don't agree. I really don't agree.
Most accurate way to think about time dilations. It's how physicists actually think about it. And
wow, I really hope not.
Once we get comfortable with hyperbolic geometry, it starts making intuitive sense.
Listen, I'm okay with hyperbolic geometry if you actually had some lines and a grid and whatever else, but I've seen that grid. Works with how gravity falls off, blah, 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 all of that stuff. It's not all of the things. You don't mix up the time diagram and the gravity falling off diagram. Don't mix those. Blah, blah, blah.
This is the way. This is the way.
Sure. No.
By the way, now that we're thinking about relativity geometrically and not as time slowing down, all kinds of time-related misconceptions go away.
Okay. Literally, they're thinking time slowing down. They're not saying the geometry stuff that you're talking about. They're not saying that. To be clear, let's be really clear about that. They're not saying any of that nonsense. You're saying they're saying, except for maybe in this book that you read. No one in any scientific communications place has ever said it's not time slowing down or something else. It is time slowing down. Do you realize we have to beam time from the relatively consistent clock on the planet to the satellites because we can't compensate for the motion differences of the satellites. We just can't compensate for it because it's randomish.
For example, a common misconception is that, hey, if you travel at very high speeds, you age slower, you live longer. Wrong.
That's not a common misconception. It's the common understanding, meaning that's what they're saying. That's not a misconception. That's an understanding, which is a misunderstanding, not a misconception. Slight difference. Whatever.
Time never slows down, clocks never tick slower. If you go close to a black hole, you age slower, you will live longer. Wrong. Time never slows down, clocks never tick slower. As you enter the black...
Okay, I think... Yep, no, you're just hyper now.
hole, the rest of the universe speeds up, and so you see the entire future history of the universe behind you. Wrong. Clocks never tick slower or faster. Time never slows down or speeds.
Okay, I'm gonna just... I know I'm repeating myself. We did an experiment in the 70s. The clocks are measured, moving, slower, in one direction, with the rotation of the Earth. They were measured as being freaking either higher or slower, and in the opposite direction, it was the opposite effect. So you can't say they are not measured that way. We are measuring in that way because atomic clocks are stupid. So time measured differently, it's not even different elevations, it's not even different relative to gravity, it's different in relative to the rotation of the Earth. So how much distance has actually traveled? I can't stress enough. We know this already. For the wrong reason, because we're thinking time dilation. In fact, it is the thing in the 70s that proves it's not time dilation. It's a difference in distance traveled over time that clocks tick at a different rate because one went at a longer distance in the same amount of time, literally, and the other one went a shorter amount of distance in the same amount of time because of all that. And because of that, when you move a further distance in the same amount of time, it takes longer for the ticks to do, so therefore it will go slower. Less time will be recorded. Imagine if the pendulum just keeps getting longer and longer, right? In the other direction, it was going faster. Less distance traveled meant a faster tick rate. More time was being recorded. That's what happened physically. We've seen it. You're denying an experiment. I'm sorry. That's a complete. You might not be aware of that experiment. Okay, sure. That's still an F.
It's up. All of those things go away. And the most notorious paradox, the twins paradox, goes away.
I don't like the twins paradox. It was badly written. The math was wrong and things about all of that. But who cares?
As well.
What are you gonna say?
Earlier we would think that, hey, if my twin were to go very far away and then come back, I am at rest, and since moving clocks run slower, her clock must be running slower. She must be aging slower, and so she must be younger. But the same thing applies from her perspective. From her perspective,
we already know. Literally. The object that has been accelerated. Alright, if you think about... Oh, God. The the idea of...
she is at rest, and the rest of the universe moved away and then came.
Because it literally didn't. Because if that happened, if the Earth suddenly moved away, guess what happens to the atmosphere? It's fucked. So that didn't happen. So no, you can't measure it as happening. So shush.
Back.
Respectively,
so it must
shush.
be the rest of the universe, their clock must have been, slower, and therefore I am the one who's younger.
There is only one physical phenomenon, you moving forward, with the astronaut moving away and then coming back. There's only one accelerated person. There is not both accelerated. There can't be both accelerated because the atmosphere is still here.
Paradox.
No.
But now it goes away because we know this statement itself is wrong. Clocks never tick slower. Time never slows down.
It literally has been measured to do so.
Boom! Twins paradox goes away.
Word patriarchy, for example, has been used.
Wait. I have a problem.
I have a big problem.
If time never ticks slower, clocks never slow down, then we would predict both of them to be of the same age, right? But we know that's wrong. Relativity predicts that she would be younger. How does that make any sense, Wheeler? So
yeah, they're not both the same age and whatever else. No, wait. Is that what they said in the TED Talk? Is that even what they said in the TED Talk? You can't even just pull stuff out of your head. You have to go based off either observations, math people have already done, or something else. But then you're whatever.
If time never slows down,
I mean, if I can say they're wrong, why can't he?
It's just a measurement artifact of simultaneity axis tilting. How can people age differently? And Wheeler says, well, Mahesh, it's kind of like how you can spend the same amount of time trying to learn something and yet get much deeper intuition if you use brilliant. This rotates to your New Year's resolution. Most importantly, you can get started for free. Just go to Technology has decided to meet up at some point. So, Wheeler, how can people age differently if time passes at the same rate for everyone? And Wheeler says, great question. Let's go back to the car analogy. And I love it. This.
Yeah, if you have more gravity, right? Let's just say if they were right about everything about all this nonsense. If you have more gravity, right? Because obviously as you go further away from the planet, eventually you have less influence of the planet's gravity. And all of that, you being sucked in-ness, and which is weird how that even happens in the first place. Why does it even happen? The point is it does. As gravity tapers off, if you're just in a geosynchronous orbit or something, or connected to a geosynchronous something, you feel less and less or something as you move further and further away from the planet. You're actually in the geosynchronous orbit, you're still moving the same rate as the planet, you're just moving way faster. You're feeling a certain amount of force with you. Geosynchronous and stuff. If you were to truly not geosynchronous and just eventually be away from the planet into interstellar or interplanetary space, let's say interplanetary space, like even just being far enough away from the moon, you're not going to be affected by the moon at all. You got to be a lot closer to the moon to feel its gravity and stuff. So it tapers off, and what you notice is different forces act on your body. You're not being pulled towards your seat as much and whatever else. That's what gravity is feeling like, or towards the ground. You're in free fall, or the empty space, where there is no force of gravity pulling on you. Now, here's the thing, right? I'm actually going on a tangent that I've lost track of. I can do that. I'm allowed.
Our analogy has all the answers. Okay.
Sure it
So,
does.
we have two cars moving at the same speed. That's the point. Moving at the same speed, taking
Right.
this path. What if they decide to meet up at some point, say over here? So the question is, if their odometer reading is 0 over here, then what will be their odometer reading when they pass through this point? Will they be the same or different? And I say that
There's all sorts of ways you can get to those directions. Whatever.
it's a straightforward question. The blue car would have a higher odometer reading. It has traveled a longer distance. But Wheeler says, Mahesh, they're both traveling at the same speed. Their odometers are running at the same rate throughout the journey. Then why does one accumulate more odometer reading compared to the other?
They're not traveling in the same direction, so there's a different distance, blah, 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 something, something.
Struggle with writer's block. Lyric cheat sheet. Take your lyrics.
To the other? Because they take different paths. Exactly. If you take different paths
Okay.
from one location to another, you will accumulate different odometer readings, right?
Yeah, okay.
The same thing happens in space-time. If you go back to your twins, the twins case, then look, between two events of separating and then eventually meeting, they both take different paths through space-time. Just like over here, when you take different paths, you'll end up
Yeah.
with different odometer readings. If you take different paths over here, you'll end up with different odometer. In other words, your proper time readings. Therefore, by taking different paths through space-time between two events, you can end up aging differently.
Sure.
Okay, that makes sense. All right. So now let's dig deeper.
Okay.
Wheeler asks, which of them would have a higher odometer reading, you said? I said this one, right? Why?
Let's just remember that if you do the whole light time stuff diagram stuff something, the time, that whole time V diagram is that somehow this is that diagonal here, this is diagonal here for this one. And so when you're moving here, you're going closer to the speed of light. And then suddenly you're moving the opposite direction closer to the speed of light. Instead, you're just moving at consistent speed, which is 0 or whatever. Let's just remember that he's still in the wrong diagrams. I'm not joking. It's hard to follow because of all of that.
Because this path is longer. How do you know that? come on, this path, I can see it. No, the point is that over here things might be intuitive, but over here it's not. So you need to find a really elegant way to convince yourself that. Okay, here's how we can do that. I can draw a line over here.
Okay, your diagram is missing the whole curve space-time, the way it all does that thing. And so without those trajectories, it's hard to keep track of what the hell is going on.
Because it's symmetric about this point, and compare these two paths. If I draw a circle, because we live in a circular geometry over here, then I can immediately see that, hey, look, this path is longer than this.
We live in a flat plane on this
path by this much amount because it sticks outside the circle. And similarly, I can say this path is longer than this path, so this total path.
Stretch the circle.
Is longer than this path, and therefore this path is longer. Boom. And now. Wheeler says, Mahesh, perfect. Moment of truth. Can you apply the same thing over here and convince yourself of which path is longer and which is shorter?
Well, you gotta do geodesic. So
instead of circle, you have to draw hyperbola. Great idea to pause the video, folks. Moment of truth. Please try. Okay, we divide this into two paths. We'll divide this into two paths as well and only focus between these two path lengths. To do that, instead of drawing a circle centered here, we're going to draw a hyperbola centered over here. How do you draw hyperbola? Well, first you draw your light cones because that, light paths, because 45 degrees, that will be your asymptotes. And then you draw a hyperbola, and then we'll get rid of them because that's not necessary. Okay. So
I really don't need that. Just say on the straight line instead, and then circle facing the direction travel, something. Although it does seem to peter out, you've got a weird circle going on there, buddy. Whatever.
Now we can look at this and we can say, hey, this path is shorter than this one by this much amount. Can you see? Because remember, all distances from this point to the hyperbola are equal, but this one is shorter. And therefore, this path is shorter than this one. And of course, the same logic applies over here. And as a result, look, the traveling twin took a shorter path. And therefore, she accumulated less distance, which is less.
I need to what?
Proper time. Logic applies over here. And as a result, look, the traveling twin took a shorter path. And therefore, she accumulated less distance, which is less proper time.
You can't hyperbola only in one direction. You just can't. For reasons. Without reference to... I mean, if you're gonna... like, still... something... and...
time. Therefore, she is younger.
What the fuck?
And therefore, she...
You got way too many ads, buddy.
Accumulated less distance, which is less proper time.
Let's stop giving this guy ad revenue, please.
Therefore, she is younger. Even though clocks are ticking at the same rate, time is passing at the same rate, she took a short between these two events. She is younger. Oh.
I took the longer path of how to watch this video by reacting to it instead of the shorter path of just watching it.
Oh my god, this is it. This is how you think about time dilation. Amina says, now I know you have a question about her perspective. We'll get to that. But before we do this, we can now come up with a principle. See, over here, between any 2 points, if you take a straight line, that is the shortest path, right? If you take any bent path, that is longer. More bent, longer the path becomes. The same thing applies over here, but in reverse. The straight line between any two...
You're forgetting that if I'm on... Let's just say that I'm on a sphere. These lines are the same length. They're literally not longer or shorter. and they can bow and they come back together. So what you're referencing is change in direction, something. It's still, is it shorter? Again, without the curved space-time diagram proper, you're not communicating correctly to anyone else except for me, who knows what you're referencing. Which is unfortunate for you as a communicator, because you're not referencing it for anyone else.
Events, that path is the longest path. If you take a bent world line, that path becomes shorter. If you bend it even more, that path becomes even shorter. So over here, we can say,
are you moving closer to the speed of light? I'm still gonna go on you about that. Because you said it. You repeated it.
straight paths is the shortest distance between two locations. What can we say here? Well, straight paths is the longest distance between two not-location events. Why longest? Because of the non-Euclidean. That's the weirdest part over here, the non-Euclidean geometry, the negative sign that we saw earlier.
Yeah, look, I can understand non-Euclidean geometry just fine. That is possible about things when it's bowing instead of a circle and stuff. You still end up with stuff being able to be the same lines and stuff. The inside of the circle operates the same as the outside of the circle. If you go through, you still end up separating and then coming back. It's a different kind of saddle where it separates and it doesn't continue back for something. And referencing, like, literally a three-dimensional representation of all of this would make a lot of what he's saying to make a lot more sense, and I'm just not okay with his diagrams at all, but also wrong about other things.
In the Pythagoras theorem. But what exactly is a straight path over here? What is the definition of straight? Well, over here we can say something is straight if you're driving in such a way you don't have to turn your steering wheel. Then you know that you've taken a straight path. That's the best way to define straight over here. Over here, what is the definition?
And here I don't even have any diagrams, so what can I say? Blah, blah, blah. But also, the
definition of straight. When do we say a world line is straight? If there are no forces acting on you, if you're not accelerating, if you have an inertial path. So we can say inertial path will...
And again, you're doing closer to the speed of light diagram thing, so he's accelerating more, and the other part of this line leading to this bigger thing, and distance shorter and something.
Always accumulate what is distance, proper time. So inertial path will give you maximal proper time or maximal aging between two events. And so the reason why the Earth twin is aging.
I'm literally not ignoring you. I'm just disagreeing a whole lot.
More is because
I know what reality actually does.
He took the inertial path from this event to this one, but the astronaut.
Or that is to say that No, I am actually like kind of glossing over some of it because like, so what? Not reality. Don't care. Don't need to care. That's the thing. Not reality. Not relevant.
Took a non-inertial path, a shorter path, so she aged less. But Wheeler, now let's come to the main argument. Her path is bent from my perspective. That's why she's taking a shorter path, appearing younger to me. But wait, can't I say from her perspective, she is traveling a straight world line and it's my path that is bent? Can't I do that? And so I would end up being younger. The paradox remains. Wheeler says, okay, let's come back over here. From the red card's perspective, it took a straight path, but the blue one took a longer bent path. So can I now say from the blue card's perspective, it took a straight path, and the red one
Then what?
took a longer path? No, you can't say that. No, I mean, it's an objective fact that the blue card took a longer path, right? Like, It doesn't depend upon your reference frames. The blue car has traveled more distance. That's it. That's an objective fact. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. And so Wheeler says, in the same way, this doesn't work.
Ads.
In the same way, this doesn't work.
Sure.
The reason why it doesn't work is because those transformations are not allowed. You can't rotate like that.
Listen, in Euclidean geometry versus flat geometry, you can do all that shit, and it makes complete sense. You're not using the right diagrams, you're not visualizing it correctly, and you're forgetting the change in the way straight lines even work, and there is no need to directionally change in order to blend together depending on the geometry of the thing. But when you forget how your geometry even is supposed to look, it's a lot easier to get things mixed up, wrong, and misunderstood, or whatever.
The only rotation that's allowed over here is circular. So if you do a circular rotation, look, whatever you do, you can't make that bent path straight. The fact that this path is bent is an objective fact. So it doesn't matter how you rotate, you'll always end up with the same fact that this path.
Unless, of course, you're on a planet, then you gotta wonder what actually happens then. Like if there's then the blue line would be shorter, technically. Something bent. Fuck it.
Path is longer. The same thing applies over here. You can't do any rotations. You are only allowed to do hyperbolic rotations over here. And when you do those hyperbolic rotations, you will always find that it's this path, and the traveling twin would be younger.
Something, whatever.
Okay, Wheeler, but wait. If I were to put a camera on the blue car and follow it, I could, in principle, say that it is taking a straight path and the rest of the world is the one that's turning, right? I could say that, right? Yeah, you can do it, but the outcome will not change. Why not? I mean, I know it doesn't, but like, why not? Let me see it. It says, let's do it. So let's look at an animation, okay? So from the red car's perspective, this is how the animation looks like. Okay, now let's focus on the blue car.
Right.
And let's see what the animation looks like from here. Okay, since the camera is there on the blue, we'll assume that the blue car did not turn, it's the rest of the world that turned. So, boom. This is what it looks like. And look, when the rest of the world turns, this car teleports from here to here. Of course, it's not really teleporting, it's just that the rest of the world.
Again, without the right diagrams of how, again, two straight lines would converge after diverging, you can just look at a globe and see this. Latitude lines and nonsense. It's blah, 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 blah. That's not a flat surface like a piece of paper. That's where it's curving and doing stuff. You're on a ball, sir. You're not on a flat. In this other bubble.
And so now the animation continues. And sure, by doing some hacks and mid rotations, you can make this world line straight. But then this.
No one knows what he's on at this point. No one in science would ever agree that what he's on is correct. Logic, thoughts, anything. It's all just you're lost in some very serious weeds.
World line gets cut, and the outcome is the same. This path is longer, and this path is shorter. That fact does not change whatever you do. The same thing happens in space-time. You can try to make this world line straight by doing mid-level rotations and stitching them together like we did in this case, but then this will get broken, and whatever you do, the fact remains that this world line will be shorter than this one. It's an objective fact that the blue red car did not turn the steering wheel. It's an objective fact that the blue car.
Everyone else would just have to hope that you're right. Real scientists even looking at you would be like, what are you talking about?
Turn the steering wheel. that does not depend on reference frames. Same is the case over here. It's an objective fact that I took a straight.
Even the ones who agree with certain things that you're understanding to make your assumption and that are still going to be like, what are you on about?
World line. I took an inertial path, and she's the one who accelerated over here. That fact cannot go away by doing any kind of transformations, and that's how your paradox gets resolved.
It's like a saddle versus a bull or something. One is going in a circle above, which is we're on a planet doing that whole circle thing. But then in the saddle, what's happening is you're going into a dip. Instead of going over the circle, you're going into a valley and stuff, whatever. And still, again, stuff can need to take longer paths and shorter paths and things. Straight lines don't converge and they diverge and you have to turn and blah 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 blah. Other videos make a better example of this because they actually have a space-time diagram that works instead of being nonsense.
Okay,
Blank.
the final question we could be having is, all of this is in flat space-time, but what if you go to curved space-time? It looks like things are going to get super complicated, right? And
you just said all of it was in flat space-time. You get a complete slap in the face, buddy. You can't say any of that and say you were talking about flat space-time because you were not. You were talking about curved space-time.
Taylor says, actually, no. Come back to the cars over here. Okay, if this was not a flat space, but it was, say, curved, there's a hill over here or something like that, the principle still applies. The person who does not turn their steering wheel ends up taking the shortest path, and the one who does turn the steering wheel takes a longer path. That principle works even when there is curvature, right?
Your curves are weird.
The only thing that we need to modify is we need to be careful about the word straight. Straight doesn't make any sense anymore.
No, I get freaking latitude.
Because your world itself is curved, but that's okay. Our definition of straight is that your steering wheel does not turn. As long as you have...
It'd be great if your curve was in line with the curve of the curve so that the curves would make it seem like it's not a curve, but it's so skewed up that I'm sad as a presenter.
A path in which the steering wheel does not turn between two locations, that is the shortest path. We call this path geodesics.
Notice how the other one is literally, like, according to this, even though it's a straight line, no, it's not straight anymore. It's actually, the red line is bent outward for some fucking reason. Instead of going along with the curve, it's like a D shape. It's bent outward or whatever. You turn your head to the side, you can actually see it's not straight up and down anymore. It's got a curve that's not going along with the curve of the other thing. And so, whatever, I don't care.
We say that geodesics is the shortest distance between two locations, even in curved space. Guess what? The same thing applies over here. Even if there was curvature over here, the same thing would apply. Inertial path.
Positive or negative curvature? Pick one. Also pick your orientation compared to curvature. Please. I wish you would.
Paths, it need not
Show
look
it.
straight. It might get distorted.
Show
but
it.
the path that is inertial, the path in which there is no
Please.
forces acting on it, will end up having maximal aging
12 billion people asking you to show it.
between the two events. So you can see why
Do you know why I said 12? Say in the comments.
physicists love this.
It's the amount of population after all of this has been explained something and actually understood, because by that point we will have 12 billion people on the planet as the population. It's not there yet. We're at 8 or something. I don't care.
This way of thinking, because it doesn't matter whether you're in flat space-time or curved space-time, this principle applies. You don't have to think about gravitation.
You know what? Screw you. I'm actually going to look up how much people are on the planet. Fuck off. Pause. I don't care what number I said. It's 8 billion now. Yeah, I was fucking right. I said 12 billion. You know why? Because bitch is gonna go up. Yep. So, what the fuck are these numbers in relative to other things? Well, apparently it goes up. So, it's gonna reach 12 in 2050 something or another. The numbers are a little weird. Let's ignore this and go back to you because I'm already
Gravitational time dilation,
just
inertial
wanting to
kinematic
get
time
over
dilation.
this.
This is a single principle that applies in general. But there's a second effect
Blah.
that again we can see from here.
I hate the ad.
Applies in general. But there's a second effect that again we can see from here. If you take the distance between 2 points on a flat space, notice what happens with the distance when we add curvature. It becomes longer. Even though
I'm trying not to vomit.
the car has not turned its steering wheel, it's going straight, the path length becomes longer because of the curvature, right? So your odometer will end up accumulating more distance when it's passing on a curved space. The same thing applies over here, except it'll be the opposite. If your world line passes through a strongly curved space-time area, your odometer will accumulate less proper time. Again, why less? Because of the negative sign. Which means, let's say that there was a black hole somewhere over here. Let's say the black hole is far away from the Earth, so it doesn't affect me much. But the traveling train comes very close to the black hole and then goes away. What happens now? Well, first of all, we know that this traveling twin has taken a non-inertial path to begin with, so that's a shorter path to begin with. But now that she goes close to a curved space-time, curvature reduces her proper time. It doesn't increase, it's the exact opposite. Just like curvature increases the distance, the curvature over here reduces the proper time even
Diagram would be great. Be freaking great. Be awesome.
further. And
Like proper lines showing the curves of how the space is going time.
therefore, now when she comes back even younger than in the flat space-time case. So that's why when you travel close to a black hole and come back, you end up becoming super young, not because your clock ticks slower or anything like that, but the effect of curvature is that you end up accumulating even smaller proper length, proper time along that path. And again, if you ever get confused, come back over here. Just like how when a space gets curved, it adds more distance. Similarly, when space-time gets curved, it reduces your proper time for the world lines that are
You've already been called basically propaganda or something. You're on. No.
close by. That's
Just literally anyone would ask you to please have. What is this? It's a black hole. And you getting close to it is like, what exactly? How does the curved lines work? Because
that's basically how it happens. So, putting it all together, how do you think about time dilation in the most accurate way without resorting to metaphors like time slowing down or clock ticking slower? Well, first start with the familiar space. If you want to reach some location ahead of you, you can take a straight path, that is the shortest distance, or you can take any other bent path, curved paths, which will give you longer distance, right?
you know that planes literally have to go not in a straight path. They have to go up and they take a curve, which is actually compared to if you were to go along with the length, shorter. This is true about objects going around a sphere. If it's a saddle, it's a different story and whatever else, and you can change things, how that works, something, and have a different understanding of how that works, but you're not really keeping with all the details of how all of that works with your diagrams, any of that. You've lost everyone, literally everyone.
Similarly, if you want to reach a future event in space-time, an event could be something like being on Earth one revolution later, okay? You can take different paths. If you don't...
Like 1 day or 1 year? Which one? I don't know. Are we on our Earth or Super Earth where it takes longer?
Do anything. Just sit quietly, take an inertial path to that event, you will age the maximum. And that happens to be about a year. Since most of us take an inertial path, most of us will end up aging by a year when one revolution happens. But relativity teaches us you don't have to take that path. You can take non-inertial paths like that of the traveling twin over here.
Non-inertial is the Earth. Both of them are inertial. They're moving away from the Earth. And the Earth is inertial, even compared to everything, because it's drifting and stuff, blah, 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 as well as rotating and whatever.
You can go very far away and accelerate and bend your world lines, all by going close to a region where the spacetime is really curved, like a black hole or a neutron star. Both of this will shorten your spacetime path, and it'll allow you to reach that future event quicker. That's what relativity teaches us. You can reach those future events quicker. And so, for example, you can reach that future event, say, maybe in not 1 year, but maybe in just 3 hours of your personal time. And when that happens, you would have aged only by 3 hours, but the rest of them who took inertial paths would have aged by a year. You end up younger than them.
I think you jumped back and forth that you'd lost your own track. But also, no, none of that you have ever said. Literally, again, let's just do a cursory view of
But the effect is real and can be measured. To do this, all you need are a couple of atomic clocks and a jet airplane. And this
I fucking told you.
experiment was carried out in 1971 when
Bitch.
scientists flew an atomic clock around the world and then compared it to one on the ground. As Einstein predicted, the two clocks no longer agreed. But the
Yeah.
effect is real and can be measured. To do this,
Okay, so the thing is, they sent another clock. Okay, first of all, they sent two clocks. The clock in one direction and then the other direction. You got a positive and a negative result relative to the rotation of the Earth. This is not all of the information, but it's enough to say, hey, we already have this. And you're just ignoring an experiment that has been documented. Not something that's been said on the internet, something that's been fucking got on paper. By people who really freaking actually paid attention. Something was noticed about atomic clocks. This happened. So what? You're just on it. What? It says atomic clocks. Is there any other, like...
They are making clocks that are accurate to 1 part in 1,000 trillionth of a second. This thing will not lose.
That's... You know 1,000 trillion is a quadrillion? That's nice.
Use time over the age of
And
the
this is a
universe.
mechanical clock?
This is what's called an atomic clock.
Atomic
It's
clock,
optical
okay.
lattices, and they cool things down to almost absolute
wow.
zero. But the reason is the Earth used to be, the Earth was the first clock, right? The Earth turns around once per day, right? And the Babylonians decided that they'd like to do it. And
You know, the Earth's not doing the rotation once per day. It's like once per 23 hours and something minutes. And it's slowing and whatever. So it's like you gotta be more accurate than that.
units of 60, and even though we have 10 fingers and toes, they did in fractions of 60, 60 minutes, 60 seconds, 3,600 seconds in an hour. They are making.
Yeah, so here's the problem. That's neat. Magnets are neat. So
it turns out that Einstein was right when he said the distinction between past, present, and future is an illusion. There's no proof of this. Here's what they did. They took 2 atomic clocks, which can keep time down to a billionth of a second. They set them to the exact current.
okay, one person is saying a trillionth of a bit or a thousandth of a trillionth, or what's the number here? Who cares?
Time, then put them on airplanes flying around the world in opposite directions. When the clocks got back to
Okay, it also is in reference to the rotation of the Earth.
where they started, what they showed was that the time had passed more slowly going in one direction than the other. Now get this, 2 identical twins. One is
Yeah, no. That's big. Analo. No one can give a good explanation for this. I can! I guess that on the Earth, the forces acting on your body makes it work more so it ages too? Literally, ignoring the rotation of the Earth is ignoring the actual experiment. There are 3 clocks in the experiment, or 3 clock. 1 clock on the ground, 1 clock on the plane that moves with the rotation of the Earth, 1 clock on the plane moving against the rotation of the Earth. Can someone please have right information? This is gonna be good.
How do atomic clocks on airplanes prove time dilation? Imagine a clock so precise it can measure time to a billionth of a second. Now picture that clock flying around the world on an airplane. How could that possibly tell us anything about the nature of time itself? Well, it turns out these clocks have done just that.
This video has no likes, by the way. Just gonna put that out there.
In the early
Months ago.
1970s, scientists took highly accurate cesium atomic clocks and flew them on commercial flights around the globe. They kept one on the ground and one on the plane, and when they compared the two after the flight, they found tiny but measurable differences. These differences matched what Einstein's theories predicted, proving that time doesn't tick the same for everyone everywhere. Here's how it works. According to Einstein's special relativity, if you're moving fast enough, your clock will seem to run slower compared.
Okay, you're missing accuracy. I'm gonna ignore you. Fuck off. I'm gonna actually say I didn't watch this shit. Shut the fuck up. I'm gonna say I didn't watch this shit. Shut the fuck up. I'm gonna say I didn't watch this shit. Don't recommend me that shit. I don't like your shit. It's shit. Fuck off. God damn it. Fuck. Can you tell me it?
We continue with the sale of Albert Einstein's manuscript for the theory of relativity.
Einstein's theories of relativity are invaluable because they lay the foundations of modern
That was fucking cute.
physics, including the possibility of time travel.
One of this catalog, and I have a bid of $2 million to start the bidding on this, and $2 million now.
In his theory of special relativity, Einstein declared that time can be altered by speed. The faster you move, the slower time passes.
$3 million at $2,300,000.
But he also said that light doesn't move at different speeds regardless your reference frame, so how can time be different?
1971, Joe Haefele and Richard Keating put the theory to the test. They flew 4 atomic clocks around the world to compare the passage of time on an airplane with time on the ground.
Now you have 4 of them? 3. Or 2 in the experiment where you went clockwise, and 2 in the experiment where you went counterclockwise, Wank.
I don't trust these professors who get up and scribble in front of blackboards claiming they understand it all, because I've made too many measurements where they don't come up with the numbers they say.
Richard had told
Fucking right.
me that in all the previous work he had done, he had never seen the effect of time dilatation. Had never seen it.
I knew what was being predicted, and
You have to be accurate down to nanoseconds to notice the difference in the time span. So, and maybe over the course of, I don't know how much for the whole travel or whatever else, maybe one trip isn't long enough to notice it. Maybe you have to do 5 trips in one direction and 5 trips in another. Who knows? But also, we did, so.
but it always seemed to me that the best proof is to measure it.
Fuck yeah.
To see how time slows down with speed, they had to fly
It fucking didn't.
all the way around the world in the original experiment.
Right.
Today's atomic clocks are more accurate, so the
To be more accurate, to prove whether or not time is different depending on speed, we did this test. Moving on.
warping of time should be apparent even on an ordinary transatlantic flight.
Yes, one for me and one for my friend.
About 5 minutes past 4 local time, which is 5 minutes past 9 English time.
Einstein said time is that which is indicated by a clock. I think I know what a clock is, therefore I think I know what time is.
En route, they collected data from the pilot, then put it into Einstein's equations to predict the time change.
We have accumulated so far a change of 34 nanoseconds. Broadly speaking,
Yeah, nanoseconds. How fast is that? 10 to the 10th power? Minus 10 seconds or whatever?
somewhere between 37 and 40 nanoseconds when we land in about half an hour's time.
Suppose you would
I've never seen this video.
and you would spend your entire life on one of these aircraft flying around the world. You could expect to be younger than people who did not do that by about 1/10,000th of a second.
That's a lovely number. And also, that's only half the experiment. What the fuck are you on about? I'm not wrong. They did it in both directions versus the rotation of the Earth. It's specific. Unless that's freaking, what do you call it, Mandela, and I'm getting wrong information or whatever. But also,
To measure exactly how much time changed relative to time on Earth, the clock on the airplane had been synchronized with the international standard at the start of the trip. Then it was compared to the same standard when it landed in the United States.
yeah.
The clock on the plane disagreed with the ones on the ground by 40 billionths of a second.
Yeah. So when he says time doesn't move slower, you know we measured it at some point. We just don't understand why. I do. Again, why did they say 4 clocks? And there's 2 clocks in this experiment. This is half the experiment. The other 2 references are, again, a stationary clock and a clock moving in the opposite direction. It's not 4 clocks, because one of them on the ground is the same one that was on the ground in the first experiment. So there's only 3 clocks. 2, you're missing information. You're only talking about half of it. I'm tired of you. What is going on? Why am I not getting the full fucking thing?
The world's most stable.
They are making
Atomic clocks, but also make them robust enough to be transported out of the laboratory and employed.
I don't fucking want to hear your shit.
Ever wondered if time travel is possible? Time travel involves bending space-time, as theorized by Einstein's relativity.
You don't have to bend space-time in order to do time travel. Just saying.
One famous experiment is the Hafel-Keating experiment. The Hafel-Keating experiment involved flying atomic clocks on commercial airliners around the world in both eastward and westward directions.
Yes, there it is. Someone actually quoted it. That is the actual thing that happened. It was, one is eastward, one is westward. And you know, sun rises in the east, sets in the west. That has to do with the rotation of the Earth.
Theory of relativity, demonstrating that
I'm fucking pissed.
the clocks experience
This stupid whatever is the only one that got it right.
different time dilation effects. Scientists also study wormholes as potential shortcuts through.
So literally, you're not saying the values of the numbers and the things that was mentioned as noted. Different dilation effects. Wow, I wonder why it'd be different instead of consistent in both directions, because it doesn't matter. Wow, it's because different lengths in travel relative to, you know, the sun.
Space-time. Researchers use quantum mechanics to explore the possibility of time travel. Time travel.
It's odd that you can get some things right, some things wrong, and then other people are like, nope, we remember, you said it, and then other people are like, I don't fucking know what you're talking about.
Einstein famously had a thought experiment. It's been repeated many times.
Yeah.
Einstein was famous for thinking carefully and simply. Well, Einstein's thought...
There's nothing freaking needing to be simple about anything. In the most minimal amount of required stuff for explanations, which time dilation is like, oh, let's just have an extreme claim and then no evidence.
Experiment.
Or evidence to the contrary, and still say it's right.
known as the light clock,
known as a freaking...
allows us to explain the consequences very beautifully. So Einstein imagines a clock, which is two mirrors, with a light beam bouncing between the two mirrors. And that's a nice clock. It's like the pendulum, if you like, and it ticks away. But Einstein...
Imagine it... Oh.
Einstein says Maxwell's equations imply that we're to take seriously the notion that we all agree on the speed of light. So what does that mean? Well, for the state...
It's interesting to note that the one is literally traveling on a diagonal line instead of a direct straight line because of its motion. It's a greater distance. That's a greater distance, not time dilation. I don't...
clock, you can see that the light follows the blue path, and for the moving clock, it follows the white path. The white path
versus the top side of the screen, the blue path here, the white path here. One is straight up and down. The other one is two different directions. Longer.
Is self-evidently longer than the blue path.
Yeah, bitch. Longer. More distance. Over the same time.
But we all agree on the speed. Therefore, it takes...
So therefore, the ticking should be relative to what? The length? Or is it all ticking at the same rate? It shouldn't be. Or something.
Light longer to travel up to the mirror and back again with a moving clock than it does with a stationary clock. Therefore, the moving clock runs slow. Einstein...
Wait, did he actually say it right? No, this is part of the freaking thing. Oh, God. I don't want to have to get into another one. Did he say something right? I'm trying to think. Okay, again, it's not moving. It is one moving at a regular speed that is not changing, and the other one is moving at a speed that changes. Like a orbit that is decaying. The movement changes. The amount changes. But also, tangentially, because the beam of light is moving side to up and down, the diagonal and all of that. What if the beam of light was moving forward to back? Again, we would notice something if the speed is becoming different. And for satellites, it's always becoming different. It's always decelerating. I need to subscribe to this so I fuck off. Where's the full video of this bitch? Oh, that's cool. You don't have the full video? I'ma slap you. Where's the full video? Where the fuck is it? What do you mean you don't have it?
Famously had...
Wait, are you just shorts? Bitch, where's your videos?
Einstein famously...
No, there's the video of actual... Fuck off, I'm unsubscribing. Where the fuck is the actual... These are cosmology shorts. Where's the full fucking thing? VOD where? No, not vodka, bitch. VOD. As in the video. Anyway, the other guy's wrong. The experiment went in both directions, and the reason why it went east to west, again, the way the rotation of the Earth works. That's what happened. I'm not Mandelaing. And I'm not going to say that they're wrong about the thing in the video of the old men. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's some stuff lost in the journalism there. That's fine. That happens. Whatever.
Breathe in email summarization.
Shut up.
Joe Haefele and Richard Keating put the theory to the test. They flew 4 atomic clocks around the world to compare the passage of time on an airplane with
Why the fuck is it the same? Again, it's not 4, it's freaking 3.
time on the ground. To see how time slows down with speed, they had to fly all the way around the world in the original experiment. Today's atomic clocks are more accurate, so the warping of time should be apparent even on an ordinary transatlantic.
So far, a change of 34.
Younger than people.
This is just a different clip of the same bullshit that doesn't have the right analysis.
Einstein's theory of special relativity was first written down over 100 years ago. Among other things, it describes nor how someone to be moving with respect to one another, but this Fermilabs. To make a beam of neutrinos, we start with a beam of tons of neutrinos. They live in light, which is moving. It's by the time 8 billion, which is in the distance video. Us, the energy of the pion, which is something accelerator scientists can change in effect due to relativity. You see, what I told you is the time it takes for pions to decay according to their own watch. We experience time differently. For us, time passes more quickly. So just how much more quickly does time pass for us? Well, the answer to that is actually kind of tricky. It depends on the energy of the pion, which is something accelerator scientists can change at will. However, for the specific pion beamline that we use at Fermilab to make a neutrino beam that we sent to northern Minnesota, a realistic beam energy is 10 billion electron volts of energy. I'll show you how we determine the...
What the fuck? This is not atomic clocks. What?
difference in the rate at which the pions in our clocks tick, but I must caution you. Doing this right means that you need to know your relativity. I get lots and lots of emails from people who misuse relativity. So before you generalize, remember, I'm a paid professional. Don't try this at home. Homework, if you
I might have to butcher you a few times in the comments.
to do so, be sure to do it correctly. It turns out that you can determine the difference in the rates of two clocks by dividing the energy of the beam of pions, which we recall is 10 billion electron volts, by the mass of the pion, which is 0.14 billion electron volts. Do that division and you get 71.4. So that means while the lifetime that the pion experiences, which is 28 billionths of a second, is much longer for us, specifically 71.4 times 28 billionths of a second, or 2.
This is not an atomic clock. This is some other thing. The atomic clock is like shooting a laser against a one. It's not two mirrors. It's a laser against a beryllium atom, which has a specific thing. Something else. Something else. Something else.
2 millionths of a second. And since the speed of a pion with that velocity is near the speed of light, it means that as far as we're concerned, the pion will travel 600 meters, or 1,920 feet. That's over a quarter mile. 36% of a mile to be exact. The reason is simple. Our clocks tick more quickly than the pion's clock. So this might be confusing. So let's recap. We can measure the lifetime of a stationary pion, and it's about 28 billionths of a second. A particle with that lifetime, traveling at the speed of light, will travel about 30 feet, which is about from here to here. However, the rules of physics are a little bit different for a pion traveling at high speed. A pion with an energy of 100 billion electron volts doesn't travel 30 feet, not by a long shot. It travels more like a quarter mile, which is like from here to here. So no matter how much Einstein's theory of special relativity bothers you, the data is inarguable. Moving clocks tick more slowly than stationary ones. We
Inconclusive.